Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation. It's very precise, and I know Ram is under your care, so he'll be healthy. Well, it's time for questions. Please.
Presentation. This is, I'd like perhaps both you, Dr. Guarneri, and Andy to comment. I mean, contrasting to planetary health and integrative medicine is the huge expenditures that we're now making in precision medicine and the promises that are coming to the public. I've also seen the word precision public health, global health used in an editorial in Science that you're perhaps familiar with. And it seems like we need to do everything, of course. We can't afford all. And there's almost an inevitable clash ahead, I think, particularly around where to invest in improving health.
Thank you for the question. I think if you think about the pyramid, I would put at the base of the pyramid our environment and our lifestyle. And I'd put at the tip of the pyramid our genes, which goes into the whole precision medicine. I think when we look at pharmacogenetics, for example, what drugs should you be on, what dose of Coumadin should you be on, and so on, we sort of have the holy grail of what we can do with the genome. Perhaps knowing what you're at risk for would motivate people to make appropriate changes. But we have to recognize that 70 to 90% of the chronic diseases we see are related to our lifestyle and to our environment. And we just can't keep doing business as usual, and there's no gene switch or anything that's going to substitute right now for walking every day, eating more fruits and vegetables, making sure you don't have heavy metal toxicity, and so on. So when I talk about integrative medicine, to me it's really preventive cardiology, and it embraces all of the components that go into risk factors for chronic disease, from an emotional, mental, spiritual perspective to a physical perspective. And there are global healing traditions out there in the world beyond Western medicine that offer us powerful solutions. When someone comes to me and they have stress and anxiety, I don't usually say take a Xanax. I say let's get you doing your rosary if that's your spiritual tradition, or let's getting you learn to meditate or do something else, things that I've learned through the other world. So I think the problem is in the semantics. From everything that I see when you start looking at, okay, is it precision to me? That's about genetics, it's personalized. But at the end of the day, we have to shift from an ill to the pill mentality. Fix me when I break down. We have to move away from that and reclaim our health. And instead of just treat disease, we have to educate the health providers to teach people to create health. And that's why we're getting into a lot of trouble right now.
Next question will be from Ram.
To recount to you a small incident, I had a heart attack in '97. A week later, I went to Dr. Guarneri. She gave me this lecture. My heart was aching. And I quit eating beef, started walking, and still have not stopped. But the price she had to pay was I was giving her lectures on climate change. I think you touched on a key topic. I think this is to you and also Howard and other physicians here, Professor Estowell. I think the spirit of this meeting was we need not only alliance with religion, but also healthcare providers, because you are the two who talk to people. We don't know how to do that. So can you give us an idea how we are going to take what we learned to your community of physicians at large?
So we have a number of physician groups. I noticed that there was a paper on the table that was put out by one of the Physicians for Climate Change groups, the consortium in the United States, of which I'm part of. I think the key is going to be with Professor Sachs, because we need to be armed with the information. So if you give me the name of all those companies that are the biggest polluters, I can guarantee you I can get that out through a network of social media that would awaken everyone. missing right here on this floor, and I know we're at the Vatican and things are done differently, but if this was my conference, I would have people tweeting this information and posting this information, and it would all be all over social media right now, because that's the way people communicate today. So if you give us the information, we can take it out there, particularly to groups like the Academy of Integrative Health and Medicine. And the declaration, we're going to get published as soon as it's out.
Okay, lady first. Please.
Yeah, I just want to add, we've heard a lot about education here, and I think that educating physicians is a key area. Physicians are not trained very much in prevention. They're not trained about air pollution. They're not trained about these areas. And so while we work on changing the physician groups of those practicing, we really need to infiltrate the education system of physicians, and that's something, Ram, that I think we should work into the declaration. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for a nice presentation. I want to build on Ram's question on the theme of physician as educator. Physicians are very trusted sources, and so we may have a lot of leverage with policymakers and with the general public. But I want to ask you about a different channel, which is when you're in the exam room with a patient. A lot of us have struggled with how best to use that venue. On the one extreme, we can leave all of our principles and highfalutin ideas behind and just make our agenda at that moment the patient's agenda and address the patient's clinical concerns. On the other hand, it's a great opportunity to proselytize with a captive audience. But that may contaminate the doctor-patient relationship, which has its own sacred quality. So what do you do as a clinician with patients? Do you simply address their health concerns? Do you quietly model good health practices by biking to work yourself and leaving your bike outside the door so they see that? Or do you actually talk climate change with your patients?
That's a great question. So I think the most important thing when you're with a patient is to find out what their core concerns are. Of course, we're trained in medicine to think we know everything, and I'm going to tell you your problem is your cholesterol, your diabetes, when someone may say my core concern is walking up a flight of steps or going to my son's wedding, and so on. So you need to meet people where they're at. However, all of the principles of good health, whether it's walking, whether it's eating less meat, whether it's getting a good night's sleep, are all going to help on the climate change agenda. And I integrate those directly into my practice. And yes, I do have my walking tennis shoes right under my desk. The patients see them. I also have my dog there, so they know I walked the dog. They know I'm a vegetarian. So so you do have to, say Francis said, you have to sort of walk the walk, right? You have to be the change. And that's how I do it. And you don't tell people everything they're doing wrong and try to push your belief system on them, because that doesn't work, right? And it's different for every patient in the office.
Thanks.
Your next question will come from someone sit behind me. I cannot see him, but please.
Yes, thank you. So a comment, my typical talks I used to give on climate change are being followed by young people asking me about Cowspiracy, the movie. It's on Netflix, and that's why, a lot of them are watching it. And that's good, though, right? Because it's better that than other stuff that they might be watching there. And but the thing is, once I tried for the first time to have the Meatless Monday within the Ministry of the Environment, when I called in the people from public health, they said, because you got like nutritionists that are more like old school, and they're like, we're not really prepared to recommend not eating meat. How have you overcome that kind of traditional bias?
Yeah, I think you have to educate, and I think one of the simplest things is people are shocked when they see the climate footprint of, for example, meat from a KFOS, the amount of water consumed for 1 pound of meat. They're absolutely shocked by that. And so those kind of visuals and that kind of education is very important. And you never take things away from people completely. You give them options. And slowly you start to watch how things begin to shift. And that's how I would do it. But the key is to have the education piece. Why are we doing what we're doing? And not have it be scary, but have it be, I can be proactive about this. I can make a difference. No different than everyone carrying their bags now to the supermarket. They don't have the plastic bags because they got the message about, you know, the gyre filled with plastic and so on. I think it's about education.
Dr. Stoll?
There are many reasons to tell people not to eat meat. And as you're saying, in Netflix, many people could tell you who is paying each of those documentaries on food because they are being paid. So I can give you a better reason, which is evidence-based medicine. Cleveland Clinic published a paper in 2013 showing that meat has L-carnitine, which is also in some speed beverages. The L-carnitine, when you eat it, is transformed by the bioma, the microbiome that we have in the intestines, in the bowels, and that is transformed into 3-methylamine. And the liver transforms that in oxidized 3-methylamine, which is a very potent atherogenic. So the best reason to tell people not to eat meat is that. The question about saturated foods, you can discuss how cattle are treated, etc. But there is a scientific reason from carnitine in food that increases atherogenesis, which you could tell people not to eat meat, but be careful with B12 deficiency. That's the only problem.
And I'd add to that could actually be measured, and it depends on the individual's microbiome, and we do measure the TMAO. But I sort of like both sides of the argument. People have to know it all.
Professor Kamen?
Just a quick observation. A couple years ago, Governor Schwarzenegger asked us to build a carbon footprint calculator that we thought would be used to look at what we thought were the standard things, the energy footprint of cities and homes and transportation. But the page that gets by far the most attention is the lifestyle page. And communities in California are involved in a whole set of carbon competitions, and the biggest thing that people see that they can do generally next, because most people have either decided to get solar or decided why they can't get solar, or I've gotten a new car or aren't planning to get one for a while. But those are generally the two first ones. But food is by far the next one, and of course the one that has all these other ancillary benefits, because I've had many people say, there's some emotional value in having solar on the roof, but a brown electron and a green one are the same to me in my home, but that's not true of the diet questions. And so we have a whole calculator project called coolclimate.berkeley.edu, and it's got all these different pages. And again, that's the page that by far gets the most use.
Please.
I believe that if people have those kind of tools, they make the changes, which is why we see people walking with their water bottles, they're leaving plastic bottles behind, and so on. We just have to give them the message in a very clear way. Just like with heart disease, we said, oh, don't have full-fat milk, have fat-free milk, and then eventually everybody got on board. Maybe we need a X prize for whatever project that this group has, where we put up an X prize for $1 million, and we say whoever solves this, that we have an X prize for climate change. I think that would be something that would really spark a lot of innovation.
Thank you very much. We should give applause to the speaker.